Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. And at question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In recent weeks, I've had the privilege of meeting apprentices in businesses across Scotland at Thales in Govan, Collins Aerospace in Prestwick, and yesterday Persimmon Homes in East Lothian, where I have to report it became clear that I'll never make it as a brickie. Now, this week we started a public debate on reducing the school leaving age from 16. It's long been clear that far too many young people are being failed by the SNP's education system, and we propose giving those young people who are being left behind the opportunity of a hybrid education and training in colleges and the workplace. So does John Swinney agree that this conversation is long overdue, and will he give any consideration to our proposals?
First Minister.
I have to say this is a bold approach to First Minister's questions, given the fact that yesterday when Mr Finlay set out his proposals, he conceded in a television interview that it was not in fact certain that these proposals would reach anywhere near a Conservative manifesto. So I'm not sure Mr Finlay's got quite as much confidence after that one interview in his policy than he puts to me today. I don't agree with these proposals. We've spent a great deal of time and effort on trying to encourage young people to maximise their engagement with education. That has resulted in more young people staying on at school, and as a consequence, more young people leaving school and going into positive destinations. Indeed, positive destinations.
Let's hear the First Minister.
Indeed, positive destinations are at record levels. So I don't intend to follow the policy approach being proposed by Mr Finlay, but then I don't think he does either.
Russell Finlay.
Scotland's business community can see this issue needs proper political attention. And last night I attended a think tank event where senior people from business and education voiced their support. They can see that over the last 18 years of SNP rule, far too many young people are being left behind. Former SNP Government Economic Advisor Jim McCall said, and I quote, "A lot of these youngsters at school don't want to be there, they're not interested in it, and all of a sudden you're giving them an opportunity to learn a trade and be earning money." So I feel it's a brilliant move.
Let's hear Mr Finlay.
This Parliament needs to focus more on encouraging opportunity and aspiration, and on giving pupils the chance to thrive. So doesn't John Swinney see that we need to do things differently?
First Minister.
Well, I'm all for encouraging young people to thrive and all for taking the opportunities to make sure that's the case. So that's why, under this government, we've reformed the approach to apprenticeships. So, for example, while young people are school pupils, they can take forward foundation apprenticeships as part of a work-based learning in the senior phase, which can result in the senior phase in young people spending a day per week working with an employer. Now, we've now got 15,000, and since their introduction in 2016, 15,371 pupils have enrolled on a foundation apprenticeship and have benefited from the value of work-based learning, with 5,000 places now available each year. Now, that's the type of pragmatic approaches this government takes to make sure that we address the issue that Mr Finlay raises with me, that school doesn't suit everybody, so we are adapting the curriculum to make sure it does suit young people through the use of foundation apprenticeships, which I think has been one of the excellent reforms introduced by this government.
Russell Finlay.
As a former Education Secretary, John Swinney knows fine well that far too many young people are being left behind, no matter what selective statistic he quotes at me. 1 in 7 Scottish pupils leave school without a single qualification, and he thinks that's good enough. Last year, 500,000 days were lost to unexplained absences of S4 pupils. Thousands of bright, talented and dynamic young people simply drop out the system. Far too many are being failed by this complacent government. Is John Swinney telling us that he's really content to deprive thousands of young Scots a brighter and better future?
First Minister.
I want young people, as I've said in my earlier answer, to have the brightest future possible, which is why we have enabled schools to offer increased opportunities for young people to prepare for the world of work. So 35% of 23 to 24 school leavers gained a vocational or technical qualification at SCQF level 5 or above, which is an increase of 7.3% compared to 2014. So that's the government actually delivering practical steps to improve the work chances and the life chances of young people in Scotland. This government has reformed education to strengthen the opportunities for young people, and as a consequence, young people are leaving school, going on to positive destinations at record levels in Scotland today.
Russell Finlay.
He wanted to quote statistics around standards, but it's the lowest rate of higher passes for a decade in Scotland. And we've got an Education Secretary providing running commentary from a seated position. She'll have to stay behind for detention and setting a very bad example to the pupils that are here today. But the problems with Scotland's schools run even deeper.
Let's hear one another.
The problems with Scotland's schools run even deeper than the scandal of so many young people being left behind. Over 80% of teachers say that violent and abusive behaviour has increased. They told of being assaulted with knives, chairs and hockey sticks in a teaching union survey that was published just this week. They've been bitten, spat on, headbutted, punched and kicked. They've had fireworks thrown at them and their cars vandalised. Teachers say that they are at breaking point and pupils' education is suffering. So what does the First Minister have to say to teachers about this breakdown in classroom discipline?
First Minister.
The first thing I would say is that I take deadly seriously the findings of the NASUWT survey, which was published this week, which is why the Education Secretary has been working with local authorities and with the trade unions on a whole series of interventions in relation to behaviour at school. I think it's important that for completeness we hear all of the issues that are raised by the NASUWT survey. The NASUWT said a greater focus on exploring correlation between behaviour issues and poverty is required. The General Secretary of the Educational Institute of Scotland said, since the onset of austerity, we've seen rising incidents of violent, aggressive, dysregulated, distressed behaviour in classrooms and growing incidents of additional support needs. Now, I acknowledge that in the atmosphere and the environment since COVID, there has been an increase in the challenging behaviour within schools. That's not unique to Scotland. Every education system in the Western world is reporting the same evidence. The Government will take the action, working with our local authorities and our trade union partners, to try to address this issue, because dysregular behaviour in our schools is unacceptable. But what I will not do is I will not do what Russell Finlay does, which is characterise all young people as behaving badly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Most young people behave well in our society, and I compliment young people on the achievements that they make in our country.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, can I start by congratulating the First Minister on the wonderful news that he's become a grandfather? I'm sure everyone across the chamber, a young grandfather, I should emphasise, everyone across this chamber sends their best wishes to all his family on the birth of baby Rua. Presiding Officer, an NHS available and free when you need it. It's the founding principle of our NHS. But under the SNP, that principle, that promise has been broken. Right now, over 100,000 Scots are waiting over a year for hospital treatment, so it's not there when they need it. And just in the last 9 months, over 36,500 private procedures have been paid for by Scots, so it's not free when they need it. Why is the NHS no longer available and free at the point of need under John Swinney and the SNP?
Minister.
First of all, President Officer, can I thank Mr Sarwar for his generous and kind comments about the birth of my first grandson, and also welcome very much his characterisation of me as a young grandfather. That's the most precious remark that's helping me come to terms with all that's going on in my life just now. But his kindness and good wishes, as of many members across Parliament, is very deeply appreciated and will be deeply appreciated by my daughter, her husband and by Rua. So I'm grateful for that. In relation to the National Health Service, Mr Sarwar knows from our exchanges that this is an issue that commands my attention and is an absolute priority for me. I recognise that people are waiting too long for treatment in Scotland today, and we are very focused in the work that the Health Secretary and I are taking forward on reducing those waiting lists. Indeed, it was the subject of a lengthy discussion yesterday between the Health Secretary and I and NHS chief officers around the country. We are in a position where progress has been made. Figures published in February show a 4% decrease in the total waiting list size for diagnostic tests, which is one illustration of the improvements that are being made, and we are determined to focus on further improvements by ensuring that we increase the capacity of the National Health Service, we increase productivity at local level, and we are able to meet the needs of the population. Because the point that Mr Sarwar puts to me in principle of an NHS being available free at the point of need when people require it is exactly what I want to deliver for the people of Scotland.
Sarwar.
I think that's an admission that the First Minister wants to deliver it, but it doesn't exist for patients across the country. And the sad truth is that the NHS isn't even free and available for all those who work in the NHS. Take the experience of an NHS support worker from the west of Scotland. She has worked in our NHS for 35 years. Increasingly unable to walk due to her hip, she was left hobbling to work on crutches. Facing up to 3 years on an NHS waiting list and being forced to retire 9 years early or paid to go private, she took the difficult decision of withdrawing from her modest pension to pay for a private hip operation. The total cost of this to her was £24,000. That's almost her entire annual salary on an operation that should have been free. This is scandalous. So is John Swinney proud that even NHS workers are being forced to pay thousands of pounds of their own money to get the treatment they need?
First Minister.
I don't want that to be the case. I want individuals, particularly individuals in the circumstances that Mr Sarwar has put to me, to be able to access healthcare services when they require them, which is why the Health Secretary and I are working so intensively with health boards to increase the capacity and the capability of health boards around the country to deliver more procedures. And that's what it comes down to, being able to deliver more hip and knee operations, to be able to undertake more diagnostic activity. And the investment that has been made available through the Government's budget for the next financial year will help us to strengthen the delivery of those increased numbers of procedures. Now, of course, as Mr Sarwar will know, there is a significant expansion in the waiting list because of the interruption of COVID, which disrupted our healthcare services. We are working to recover from that as quickly as we possibly can do, and I give him my assurance that ministers are entirely focused and have put the financial support in place to make sure this is the case, that we are able to undertake more procedures than we are able to do so in this current financial year.
Anna Sarwar.
This NHS worker is not alone. Based on the data for the first 9 months of 2024, Scots have had to pay an estimated £17.6 million of their own money on cataract treatment, £30.8 million of their own money on hip replacements, an estimated £16 million of their own money on knee replacements, and most shockingly of all, Scots have had to pay thousands of pounds of their own money to fund 700 rounds of chemotherapy. Scots having to pay for cancer care under John Swinney and the SNP. This cannot go on. That's why, as First Minister, I will declare a waiting times emergency. This is your constituents I'm talking about who are having to pay for £1,000 of care. So I think you should reflect on the groaning. Declare a waiting times emergency and do whatever it takes to cut waiting lists across the country so that Scots get the care they need. Because isn't it the case that the SNP are the ones who broke our NHS and they can never be the ones to fix it?
First Minister.
But I think Mr Sarwar's used that line to me once or twice before, and I dare say I'll hear it a few times between now and the elections in May of 2026. But let me just try to address the substance of the points that Mr Sarwar makes. The first point is that on cancer care, I'm concerned about the points that Mr Sarwar has put to me, and I'd happily look in more detail at the issues that he's raised. But on the 31-day standard, 94.3% of patients were treated within 31 days of a decision to treat, with a median wait for treatment of just 4 days. 4 days, which is an exceptional performance. The 62-day standard is still, we're finding difficulty meeting that, but the median wait is 49 days from urgent suspicion of cancer referral to first treatment. Now, in addition to that, the Government is putting in place provisions through the work that is underway just now to deliver over 150,000 extra appointments and procedures. And in relation to some of the additional sites that we're bringing on to undertake orthopaedic appointments, which you asked me about, we expect to be able to deliver over 2,500 extra procedures in those sites. But of course, that's only possible because the Government's budget has been approved by Parliament, which invests a record amount of money in the National Health Service. Now, Mr Sarwar can say to Parliament
First Minister.
all he wants about his intentions for the years to come if he has the opportunity. But in the here and now, today, when Parliament faced the decision, are we going to fund the NHS to the level required, Mr Sarwar was posted missing.
Question number 3, Patrick Harvie.
Happy news is a rare and precious thing in these times, so can I echo the congratulations to the First Minister and his family for their new arrival. In April, energy bills are set to rise for the third time in less than a year, and people across Scotland are worried about those bills. And at the same time, energy companies are raking in vast profits at the expense of people and the planet. Our energy markets are broken. Now, no doubt we could both say what we think the UK Government should do to fix those markets, but the Scottish Government has also promised action that hasn't happened. My last question to the First Minister was nearly 3 months ago, and I asked him about his promise of a new law to end our reliance on gas for home heating, which is vital to tackling the climate emergency and cutting people's bills too. It was already overdue, without explanation, back in December. Now here we are in March. There's still no legislation and no explanation. Where is it?
First Minister.
President, so the Government is considering all of the issues raised in the consultation on heating buildings. We will respond as soon as we can. I confirmed to Parliament that the tackling of the climate emergency is one of my key priorities. It's one of the 4 priorities of the Government, and heating our homes and workplaces causes around 20% of our emissions, and we cannot achieve net zero without ending our use of gas boilers.
Patrick Harvie.
Well, the Government was already considering the consultation a year ago, and the real concern is that they've been spending that time watering it down. That's the fear that I have and that I think the green heat industry has. The reality is Scotland is already well behind many other European countries on this. France and Germany have been accelerating their action. Scandinavian countries are decades ahead of us, and the only way to catch up and to give Scottish households the benefit of affordable, reliable heat and cutting the pollution that's destroying our environment is for the Government to act decisively and show leadership. But just as they've slowed down on other green measures by hiking rail fares and watering down rent controls, progress on clean heat has been stalled. Will the First Minister commit now to get this overdue legislation published this month to get the clarity and leadership that's been lacking?
First Minister.
I'm very happy to confirm to Parliament that there will be leadership to take this issue forward, as there is on a whole variety of different climate measures, which was evidenced by the financial commitments which the Government put forward in the budget, which Mr Harvie and his colleagues, I was delighted, were able to support. And I recognise the urgency and the seriousness of the issue, because as I look at the question of fuel poverty in our country, which is one of the key issues that underpins the question that Mr Harvie puts to me, it is clear that the impact of changes in energy prices on fuel poverty rates in Scotland have essentially increased have almost doubled between 2019 and 2023. And if we have to acknowledge the significance of fuel prices and energy prices on having an impact on fuel poverty. It's one of the reasons why we have to take the action on climate, which Mr Harvey has raised with me. That's why it's central to the Government's agenda and why we will deliver progress as quickly as we possibly can do.
Thank you. Question number 4, Marie McNair.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister how the Scottish Government will mark International Women's Day and its theme of accelerating action to reach gender equality.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government is accelerating action for a fairer Scotland for women and girls, working to ensure women and girls have equal rights and opportunities, equitable access to resources and can live their lives free from abuse. This work includes delivering the Women's Health Plan, investing to tackle domestic violence against women and girls and survivors of abuse, and supporting women to access fair work and helping to reduce the gender pay gap. The Government will leave no stone unturned in our work towards equality. I know many members will be attending events this International Women's Day taking place across the country in local communities, and I wish everyone a successful day of celebration and action.
Marie McNair.
I thank the First Minister for that answer. I'm privileged to have already spoken at 2 fantastic International Women's Day events in Clydebank with Moments of Freedom Women and the Zaro Community Initiative, both led by formidable women who push for social and economic integration of new Scots in our community. Therefore, will the First Minister join me in welcoming the contributions that local groups in Clydebank and Milngavie are making and advise what steps the Scottish Government is taking to accelerate action on gender equality for all women, in particular for those who face overlapping forms of oppression based on their identity?
First Minister.
I'm very happy to welcome the contribution of the Moments of Freedom Women and the Asaro Community Initiative to welcome new Scots. I know that the Moments of Freedom Women were one of over 80 organisations which hosted a community consultation as part of the work to update the New Scots Refugee Integration Strategy last year. Through our cross-policy working for the New Scots Delivery Plan, we're taking account of intersectional approaches to gender equality, including engaging New Scots on the delivery of Scotland's Equally Safe strategy and the wider violence against women and girls work to ensure the needs of New Scots are addressed. And of course, intersectionality is key to our work with the National Advisory Council on Women and Girls for accelerating action on gender equality.
Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My constituent has been told that based on the current outpatient waiting list, he's required to wait 59 weeks for an orthopaedic appointment.
Miss Hamilton, sorry, I think your question has been... Is this in relation to question number 4? I think... Yes, we will get to general constituency supplementaries at a later point. I call Tess White.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Women's human rights are being abused in Scotland due to the treatment of biological males as females. A report was published this week by Women's Rights Network with spine-chilling figures of rapes and sexual assaults in Scottish hospitals. And it's not just our hospitals. Women are being placed in harm's way, both physically and psychologically, in Scottish prisons, rape crisis centres, toilets and changing rooms. In the week of International Women's Day, if the First Minister is not alarmed by this, shame on him. And if the First Minister wants to do something about it to accelerate action, which is the theme of International Women's Day, will he meet with myself and other cross-party MSPs as a matter of urgency? How can any progress on women's equality be made without this? Thank you.
Thank you, First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I'm absolutely committed, and anyone that's listened to anything I've said during my tenure as First Minister, I am absolutely committed to protecting and asserting the safety of women and girls in our society. And I'm exercising leadership, as I have done from the moment I became First Minister, to challenge what is the underpinning issue that affects the safety of women and girls in society, and that is the behaviour of men. And I will be unapologetic in setting out that point of view from my position as a male First Minister, exercising leadership to make sure that men face up to their responsibilities to ensure that women can live safely in our society. Women and girls can live safely in our society today.
Katie Clark.
It has recently been reported that almost 10% of the 2,000 women who have died at the hands of men in the UK over the last 15 years have been killed by their own sons. What more does the First Minister believe the Scottish Government can do to raise awareness of this risk and improve support for women?
First Minister.
I think Katie Clark puts an incredibly serious point to me, and it comes back to the answer I've just given, that there is a responsibility on all of society to try to help men, boys and men, to improve their conduct and their actions, because that will be the route to addressing the fundamental issue that Katie Clark puts to me, that will result in the protection of mothers and women who face danger. So she has my absolute assurance, and I am very happy to work across the political spectrum to do all that we can to culturally improve the attitudes and approaches of men and boys in our society, because I believe it to be fundamental to addressing the serious issue that she puts to me.
Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Despite the First Minister's warm words during the answer to this question, I feel he is woefully out of touch on the situation of women's rights across Scotland. Therefore, it is utterly impossible to accelerate action towards gender equality when women's human rights are under attack. The Scottish Government must now apologise for their role in this and break from these state-sanctioned abuses. Will the First Minister make a clear commitment today to upholding the internationally protected human rights of women and girls in Scotland?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I will not accept the charge, and I reject it entirely, of state-sanctioned abuses. I will not accept that charge in any way, shape or form from Ash Regan. I've put on the record my absolute commitment to the protection of women and girls in our society. That underpins the policy agenda of my government, and it will underpin my conduct as First Minister.
Question number 5, Annie Wells.
Sir, to ask the First Minister what plans the Scottish Government has to tackle the reported rising numbers in cases of drug driving.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, in 2019 a new drug driving offence was introduced which added to the powers available to keep Scotland's roads safe. Whilst I was concerned to see an increase in the number of positive tests by Police Scotland, it is clear that their focused enforcement approach is helping to tackle the scourge of drug driving using the new law. We fully support the enforcement efforts of Police Scotland in addressing drug driving, and the budget will increase police funding by £70 million to £1.62 billion to support capacity and capability.
Annie Wells.
I thank the First Minister for his answer. Earlier this week, the Scottish Sun reported how drug driving in Scotland now eclipses drink driving by about 3 to 1. And what seems even more incredible is that when police pull over someone suspected of drug driving, the subsequent testing proves their suspicions were correct on more than 50% of occasions. In contrast, for drink driving, the tests are positive in around 1 in 20 cases. Drink driving initiatives over the years have been hailed for their positive impact and their role in making it far less socially accepted than it was in past generations, and saving lives in the process. So does the First Minister have plans to do something similar with drug driving?
First Minister.
I think yes is the point. I would agree with what Annie Wells has put to me. The Police Scotland, during the festive period just a few months ago, strengthened the drink and drug driving campaign. So I hope that gives Annie Wells some assurance that that will now be woven into the approach that the government is taking and Police Scotland are taking. If I could reassure Annie Wells that there is a very high conviction rate for drug driving. In 22-23 it was 95% of those who were accused, so a very high level of conviction as a consequence of charges being brought. But the point that she makes about the necessity of raising awareness and about the dangers is one that I accept unreservedly, and we will make sure that that's reflected in the overall messaging that is issued on this question.
Question number 6, Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. to ask the First Minister whether he will provide an update on how the Scottish Government is working to tackle Islamophobia in Scotland, in light of reports that anti-Muslim hate incidents across the UK reached record levels in 2024.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, the rise in anti-Muslim hate is of serious concern. The Scottish Government unequivocally condemns all forms of Islamophobia and the impact it has on individuals, families and communities. This is why we work cooperatively with a range of partners to tackle such pernicious behaviour. Our hate crime strategy and associated delivery plan includes strategic priorities for tackling both hate crime and Islamophobia in Scotland. Importantly, the strategy was informed by those with lived experience of Islamophobia, which is central to understanding the challenges that we face in this area.
Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you. I thank the First Minister for the answer. The First Minister will know that last Friday was the beginning of Ramadan, a time of reflection, peace and hope for Muslims in Scotland and worldwide. But Muslim communities across the UK and Scotland are now facing hatred at a higher level than ever. The UK Labour Government has now convened a working group on Islamophobia, which will create a definition of Islamophobia. So will the Scottish Government implement this definition? And can the First Minister say when we will see a real progress on the implementation of the recommendation from the cross-party group, the inquiry into Islamophobia in Scotland?
First Minister.
On the cross-party group report, there were two recommendations, I think, that were levelled at the Scottish Government. One was to increase the understanding of Islamophobia in the curriculum in our schools, and the other was to ensure that the public sector equality duty was enforced in schools. And I can assure Mr Chowdhury those priorities have been taken forward by the Scottish Government. I think it's absolutely vital that we do all that we can to ensure that we take steps on this issue. We will consider any decision made by the United Kingdom Government on the issue of a definition of Islamophobia and consider any implications for our own approach to adopting a definition once that material is clear from the United Kingdom Government.
Brief supplementary, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The growing levels of Islamophobia seen in the UK are deeply concerning, and it's absolutely vital we recognise that more must be done. So can the First Minister further outline how he hopes the gathering with representatives from key organisations that Faisal Chowdhury referenced, alongside the leaders of Scotland's parliamentary parties announced last week, will assist in creating a more cohesive society where everyone feels at home?
First Minister.
So last week I set out my aspiration to draw together leaders from across Scotland, including from our parliamentary parties, to consider how we can agree a common approach to asserting the values of our country in order to bring people together and to create a cohesive society where everyone feels safe at home. I'm very heartened by the response from civic society and from parliamentary party leaders, and I hope that we will be able to convene that gathering on the 23rd of April. My objective is to draw people together to encourage community cohesion, which involves working to tackle the hatred and prejudice that Mr Chowdhury has raised today and which has been echoed by Audrey Nicholl. And I look forward to utilising that gathering to create a firm foundation for the values of Scottish society.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries. If we're all concise, more members will have an opportunity for scrutiny, and I call Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, police officers in my region across Scotland are suffering burnout, low morale and working in desperate conditions, according to a report out this week. The same report showed 68,000 rest days were cancelled in just 6 months. The pressure being put on police officers to meet the demands placed upon them is clearly unsustainable. So what measures will the Scottish Government put in place to ensure that these hard-pressed and under-pressure officers are given the support they rightly deserve?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I value the work that police officers undertake within Scotland, and we support Police Scotland with the financial resources to enable them to deliver those services across the country. The Chief Constable has put in place a variety of measures to support the mental health and well-being of police officers. That is undertaken through an employee assistance programme which focuses on mental health support and provides enhanced occupational health services for police officers. The Your Wellbeing Matters programme offers a range of services to care for the psychological, physical, social and financial well-being of police officers, and I welcome the impact that has on supporting police officers.
Thank you. George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Figures released this week show that over 200 million free bus journeys have been made across Scotland by under-22s. As this is Scottish Apprenticeship Week, can the First Minister provide further detail about how this scheme is supporting apprentices in Paisley and across Scotland to work, learn and earn?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the concessionary bus travel scheme has been an unparalleled success, and it has crucially given young people much greater mobility within our society, enabling young people to be able to access a much wider range of employment and training opportunities around the country. Now, that will have a profound effect in all communities in the country, but I know it will be very precious for Mr Adam that it has that effect in the Paisley constituency. But I know from my own dialogue with young people of the positive impact of this policy instrument and its increasing opportunities and life chances for young people in Scotland.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware that communities in South Uist and Barra are suffering a fifth year of extreme ferry failure, and this is causing irreversible damage to the local economy. Can I therefore ask the First Minister what resource can be set aside for a resilience fund for businesses and communities on the brink of collapse due to this failure?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I am very familiar with the issues that Rhoda Grant raises with me. I had discussions about this question when I was in South Uist some years ago, and I saw correspondence last night which was sent to me by the local member, Dr Alistair Allen, in relation to the very issues that have been raised by the South Uist business community. I am sorry for the disruption that is being felt. We believed we would have been in a stronger position in terms of resilience of the ferry network, but there have been delays to some of the ferries that we expected to be coming towards us, with which Rhoda Grant will be familiar and Parliament has been advised. I am considering the proposals that have been put to me, as is the Transport Secretary from the South Uist business community, and we will update members, including Rhoda Grant, on any response from the Government to those proposals.
Claire Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I remind Chamber that I hold a bank nurse contract with Greater Glasgow and Clyde NHS. New figures show that CAMS targets were met in the final quarter of 2024, with 90.6% of patients seen within 18 weeks of referral. While there is still more to be done to build on this progress, can the First Minister advise how his government's investment in mental health services in the 25-26 budget will ensure that this target is consistently met in the future, delivering the best possible outcomes for young people who rely on these services?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, it is important that we continue to make progress on this issue, and I welcome the fact that the 18-week target has been met in the last quarter of 2024. In response to the specific question that Claire Haughey puts to me, there is £123 million that's been allocated through the Enhanced Mental Health Outcomes Framework in the budget for next year, which I hope will help to continue to build on the progress that's been made in the current financial year.
Edward Mountain.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. NHS Highlands Vascular Services have been in terminal decline for years. Sadly, our last vascular surgeon has just resigned because he feels the way the service is delivered is a threat to life and limb. Given that we have more hospital beds in NHS Highland and more vascular surgery theatres in NHS Highland, will the First Minister ask his Health Secretary to review the situation, because it is unacceptable that patients in the Highlands are being put in taxis and ambulances late at night to get to the Central Belt to get surgery?
First Minister.
I think that Mr Mountain raises an important point. Indeed, it was one of the issues that the Health Secretary and I discussed with, not that specific issue, but the general question. was one about how we deliver healthcare in areas where recruitment and employment can be a challenge, but where, as Mr Mountain correctly puts to me, there is physical capacity to undertake some of that surgical activity within the Health Board facilities. So part of what we are trying to work on is how we work collaboratively within health boards to address the very circumstances that Mr Mountain puts to me, so that we can use that capacity, which will help us to reduce waiting times and meet the needs of his constituents and others. So it's very much a live part of the activity the Health Secretary and I are taking forward to make sure that the needs of constituents are met around the country.
Bob Doris.
Presiding Officer, the United Nations Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights this week called on the UK Labour Government to immediately repeal its two-child cap as it violates children's rights and exacerbates poverty and social inequality. In that context, can I ask the First Minister for an update on the work of our SNP government to end the two-child cap here in Scotland, and will he join my calls for Westminster to yet again scrap Labour's cruel two-child cap at source, which, let us not forget, is designed deliberately to deny 1.6 million children on low-income families simply enough money to live on?
First Minister.
Let me reassure Mr Doris that the work that the Government is taking forward, which involves the design of systems to enable us to lift the two-child cap, which is one of the policy priorities and commitments in the Government's budget for the forthcoming year, is all underway, and we are making the necessary progress on that question. On the wider issue about obviously this is a measure which will help us to lift children out of poverty. That will not be assisted by some of the speculation we've heard over the course of the last few days about significant reductions in the welfare budget, which will undoubtedly have the effect of jeopardising the incomes of households in Scotland, and particularly to affect child poverty levels in our country as well.
Richard Leonard.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I remind members of my register of interests? Does the First Minister share my concern that industrial action is set to begin at Scottish Water this weekend? And what does he say to the Scottish Water trade union representatives gathered in the public gallery today about his ministers sanctioning bonuses to the bosses of Scottish Water, which are over 10 times greater than the pay rise now being offered to the workers of Scottish Water?
First Minister.
The first thing I would like to say is that I saw during the week news that Mr Leonard is intending not to seek re-election to Parliament, and I express my warmest wishes to him and commend him for his service in the Scottish Parliament, which has been full of impact on many of these issues and some of the issues that he puts to me on behalf of employees in Scotland today, for which I have the greatest of respect. The issue of strike action at Scottish Water is obviously a matter for Scottish Water, and I would encourage the Scottish Water leadership and the trade unions to try to find a solution that avoids disruption. On the question of bonuses, Mr Leonard will be familiar, because we've explained all of these details to Parliament, that when it comes to the recruitment of leadership in relation to Scottish Water, we are invariably in a competition with other water companies around the United Kingdom, in which these elements of bonus are part of the fabric of the financial settlements that are available to attract employees. Comparatively speaking, bonus payments for the leadership of Scottish Water are much lower than in other parts of the United Kingdom, and the performance of Scottish Water is much higher than other parts of the United Kingdom. So I acknowledge these are difficult comparisons to make, but they are part of the judgments that government has to arrive at about how we can attract the leadership to safeguard the important asset which is Scottish Water.
Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My constituent has been told that based on current outpatient waiting times, he's required to wait 59 weeks for an orthopaedic appointment. If he then requires surgery, he will have to be added to the inpatient waiting queue and have to wait currently up to 91 weeks. In response to Anna Sarwar earlier on waiting times, the First Minister said that progress has been made. But it hasn't, has it, First Minister? So will you apologise personally to my constituent who will wait for weeks in agony?
First Minister.
Well, Progress is being made. I said in my answer to Mr Sarwar, which I repeat in my answer to Rachel Hamilton, that figures published in February show a 4% decrease in the total waiting list for diagnostic tests. So we are making progress. I could cite, for example, a 44% decrease in imaging waits at NHS Fife, a 22% decrease in urology waits at NHS Forth Valley. So this progress has been made. And it will be helped by the investment the government is making in the National Health Service, which I just point out Rachel Hamilton didn't support. So it's all very well coming here and complaining about issues in the National Health Service. If Rachel Hamilton is not prepared to support the financial investment to go in, and actually, in fact, Rachel Hamilton represents a position that wants to reduce public expenditure by £1 billion to afford a tax cut. Now, how that will get orthopaedic appointments undertaken is beyond me. So the government is investing. We're making as much progress to reduce waiting lists, and I will be happy to update Rachel Hamilton on the progress that we make in the weeks to come.
And Neil Bibby.
Thank you. According to Police Scotland, between April of last year and February this year, there has been 132 road casualties in Renfrewshire, up over a quarter compared to the same period the year before. Speed awareness courses have been in operation in England and Wales to help the police since 2007. But as Chris Musson of The Sun wrote this week, there are still none available in Scotland, despite the Scottish Government first looking at this 16 years ago in 2009. In 2023, the Justice Secretary stated the Scottish Government, and I quote, agrees that speed awareness courses will have a positive impact on driver behaviour and accepts that research shows that such interventions reduce re-offending. So can I ask the First Minister, does the Scottish Government still support speed awareness courses? Why are we still waiting for them to be rolled out, and when will they start?
Minister.
Well, I set the point that Mr Bibby is putting to me. I'll have a look at this question and see what action the government can take to address the question. Fundamentally, there is, we have in place speed limits which are very clearly and manifestly advertised to individuals, so there's a level of personal responsibility that is at the start of all this. But if there are speed awareness courses that can help in addressing these questions, I'll happily consider those issues. And I'll write to Mr Bibby with what steps the government is prepared to take.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a members' business debate in the name of Marie McNair, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and gallery to do so.